I'm Lisa Snyderman, and this is Conversations on Creating to Heal. Today, I'm really happy to be speaking with Angel Joy in Louisville, Kentucky, a teenage poet. And her story is how her writing has given her insights into depression and chronic anxiety. So, welcome, Angel.
Hi.
Hi. So first, why don't we talk a little bit about who you are and maybe if you have a brief mission or purpose for the kind of poetry you do.
I'm Angel, of course. I'm 17 and I live in Louisville. I am a poet through and through. I love to write. I've been writing since I was very little. I also believe that art is the way to heal. It's very influential in my life through all aspects, not just poetry. I love to create, and it's very healing for me.
Wonderful. I love that you've been able to connect your art and healing already. I think that at 17, I think that's so insightful. So let's talk about this story of yours. So what was it for you? What kinds of events or challenges or hardships did you go through? And how have they most transformed you?
I personally have been through several suicide attempts. It's just really hard to struggle with mental illness at a young age because you're already dealing with developmental issues.
Mm.
And then you also have to deal with puberty and friendships and developing love habits. And it's really hard to have an illness that controls your whole emotional aspects. So, like, I have depression, anxiety, and OCD, and the combination of all three of them really brings such a heavy weight on my shoulders. And it feels so strong sometimes that it's just like I can't handle it. And that's where the suicidal ideation comes from.
Wow. Well, it's like you said, you said it so well that as a teenager, you have so many things that you're already dealing with, puberty, friendships, all of these, life lessons that you're starting to learn, that on top of it, that you had to struggle, and that you're really, you're so brave, one for sharing your story, and second for doing what you do with poetry. So let's talk a little bit about how was it a coping strategy, or have you said you've been a writer and a poet, so was this something you gravitated naturally towards?
My mom is a poet as well, so she taught me poetry from a young age. In third grade, I had a poem called Darkness Descends Me, and it's always a little tidbit my mom and I like to talk about because it really shows who I am. At like struggling with that throughout my whole life, you can really tell because at a young age, I wrote poems that were dark and sad.
Yeah.
You can tell that I used poetry to heal since a young age. It's been something that I've always wanted to do, I've always loved. And I also do spoken word, which is a type of poetry. And I learned that from after my first large suicide attempt, I was on the internet a lot because I was sad. And I found spoken word on YouTube, and it really inspired me to write my own.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's also a big testament for other people sharing
Yeah.
their stories and you being able to benefit from, and get inspired by somebody else. I think that's so neat too. So let's talk about, this is hard, let's talk about this healing for you. So where are you in this place? What does poetry help you do? Um,
It
that
really,
that helps you, I guess, eventually to heal yourself.
I think poetry gives me an outlet where I can talk about my feelings and not feel judged because I'm the one writing it, I'm the one expressing it, and it gives me more of a feeling of hope when I write. I
Yeah.
can I can write my feelings and correlate them to other metaphors and correlate. I have this poem where I correlate the amount of times I've cut my hair to the amount of times I've had mental breakdowns. And you can really see where I want to change every time something bad happens in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting to see when you find out those own hardships and you find out how they correlate with your life.
Definitely, right? And so when you write, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
When you write, do you keep it very personal, or do you then sort of adapt it like I do as a musician? Mm-hmm. I kind of start with a personal experience and adapt it to something more universal. Mm-hmm. Do you keep that personal aspect, or do you find that you end up having the universal lyric or a universal concept?
At the end, I usually tie it all together to, it depends on the poem, of course, but I usually tie it all together into about healing, about getting better, trying to make it more positive at the end, even if the whole poem's dark.
I love that. So it's almost like you have the uplifting or the hope at, that light at the end of the tunnel. Wow. So what has the experience for you been about sharing your poetry? Do you share it? And what kind of feedback do you get from that?
I share with my family a lot because we have a lot of family or like events. So I like read for the family. And then I've done a few poetry readings, which is, I haven't done a lot because I'm a very anxious person. And every time I do them, I like, it's so much. It's a lot to prepare for. So I've done a few and I've had good feedback. I feel very proud of my writing. I love that I can share and other people can hear my story.
Do you have any plans for your poetry that you've already written, or do you think that you'll do an anthology, or do you think this is going to be something that's your creative journey and, to keep it to yourself?
I personally want to share. I want to make a book with all my poetry and not all of it, but like coincide the ones that go together and share that with the world for they can see that even at a young age you can still do things.
No, it's great. It's a very positive message. So right now I want to invite you to share some of your poetry and then maybe talk a little bit about why you selected those pieces.
In remembrance of my anxiety. Raise a glass to the many of times I told my parents I wasn't comfortable calling someone over the phone. But it's your grandma. And yes, you are correct, she has semi-same genes as me, but that doesn't mean I won't stutter over my words when she asks what college I want to go to. My palms will still sweat at the thought of lying to my Catholic grandma about going to church when I haven't stepped past the pews in months. When she laughs at my awful joke, I will still think she's being sarcastic because the laugh rings over the phone at just the wrong tone. And that seemed to be the work of my anxiety. Round of applause. Remember the time I called my mom in the bathroom of the 9th grade center? Small hand shiver towards the dials. I click 502, blah, blah, blah. And I started crying about my upset stomach. With nothing but half an apple inside, it hurt like a bullet wound went straight through from front to back. The gun was held by the thought of a full hallway, backpacks touching, loud noises of chatter that must be about me, and nonetheless my anxiety. Again, always a trickster. There was a time when I was with just my anxiety, sitting alone in my bedroom, cuddled under the blanket with a flashlight, telling each other gossip we heard, mostly about myself, considering that's all we had in common. It was never anything good, but it was always true, and it always hurt my feelings. I would pretend to go to sleep with tears in my eyes and a blade against my wrist, a cliche as if it wasn't hard enough. I soon had blood on the green carpet and my friend disappeared. Christmas colors smeared around my room as if all this was the gift I wanted. All the thoughts of better options, better person I could be, better life I could have. But no, I never had the better sides of things. Because the anxiety took the goodness and made it worry. It took the reason and turned it into what if. The anxious feelings have died. but by a simple sentence exuding a feeling of hopelessness, I begin to resurrect. The pencil stitches up the wounds and the paper soaks up the blood into what becomes art, something I have created from darkness into light. So thank you, anxiety, for always being cautious and worrying over everything. Because of you, I am me, and my art is being created.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Wow, I love the vivid imagery. I love that you're able to really pull me in to the feelings and the place that you wrote it from. And I also love that it's very hopeful,
Thank
you know,
you.
that you've come out of that place. So before we go, I want to see if along your journey that you might have some words of wisdom, you know, to leave with our viewers, what I call life lessons. Maybe somebody who's going through something similar could benefit from it. And maybe it's an affirmation, you know, or something that you tell yourself to keep going.
I tell myself all the time that when I'm depressed, I can tell the difference between the air and when I'm feeling better. So when I feel the air on my body, when I'm outside, when I'm sad, it feels almost agonizing, almost dull. It feels like I'm touching empty space. And then when I'm feeling better, I can feel the wind. And it's wild how you can start to feel the freshness go through your body. And I think something that always keeps me together is that when I'm in the good space, I feel the air. And that's something to look forward to.
Wow, that's very poetic already. Feel the air when you're in the good space. There's so many layers of meaning to that. So thank you for leaving us with that. Thank you for sharing your story. And thanks for coming on to Conversations on Creating to Heal.
Yes, of course. Thank you.